Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. I hope all of you are doing absolutely. I almost kicked over the camera to start the video. Whoa, hold on now. Being 6'2" has its drawbacks. You know, I just don't want to destroy my whole set here, or else you wouldn't get to see my pretty little face every day. Maybe that'd be a good thing. Anyway, welcome everybody to a Xbox Activision news update. Today, we're sifting through all of the latest developments on this deal as it's finally reaching its grand finale. You know, I've definitely pumped the brakes a bit on the rapid coverage I was originally doing for this deal because I was getting tired of it. You were getting tired of it, and we were all just ready for it to be over. And unless something massive happened, like the FTC case or the leaks that came through the Bethesda schedule, those types of things we would cover thanks to this deal. But otherwise, we were waiting for big happenings like this, where we're going to get into when the deal may close as soon as tomorrow, maybe even by next Wednesday, the latest. We're also going to talk about Activision Blizzard games heading to Xbox Game Pass, how soon that may be happening, and even the reemergence of Guitar Hero through Xbox. So a lot of exciting stuff to get into today, not just legal hullabaloo and financial analysis. It's fun gamer stuff. So I hope you are excited. And before we begin, consider subscribing if you're into anything Xbox or Activision related, as we'll be covering it a lot as they are welcomed into the Xbox family. And before anything else, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by Fume. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, take that from me, but there's a better way to break your bad habits, and that's how Fume looks at things by removing the bad from the habit to make it easier to walk away from it entirely using this innovative, award-winning device. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural, and instead of vapor, it uses flavored air, removing harmful chemicals from the entire process with all natural, delicious flavors. So you get it. Instead of bad, you get something good here in Fume. And they have brand new cores that just released with orange vanilla, raspberry lemon, sparkling grapefruit, and I can't believe when I tried it out how delicious these tasted. So stopping is something that we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, so there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/MrMattyPlays or scan the QR code and use code MrMattyPlays to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code MrMattyPlays to save an additional 10% off on your order today. Let's begin at the top with The Verge, who reported on October 6th by Tom Warren that Microsoft is eyeing its closing of its giant Activision Blizzard deal next week, where they say Microsoft is planning to finalize its $68.7 billion proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard next week. A source familiar with Microsoft's plans tells The Verge that the company is eyeing up Friday, October 13th as the closing date, where it announces to the world that the 20-month, holy smokes, it really has been that long, has it, process to buy Call of Duty maker Activision Blizzard is over. So as soon as tomorrow, we can have some sort of update. I think what's going to happen is we'll get some kind of like Xbox Wire post announcing, hey, we own them now. Here are the plans for a roundtable. And I think they're going to gather, just like they did with Bethesda, the big heads. Like for Bethesda, you saw Todd Howard, you saw Pete Hines, Aaron Losey, and so on and so forth. But you also had familiar Xbox faces, Phil Spencer, Aaron Greenberg, Sarah Bond, and so on. I think for this one, they're going to grab Bobby Kotick. I think you're going to get someone like Mike Ibarra, and so on and so forth. And they're going to sit around and pal out and talk about why they're such a perfect fit for each other. But what we're going to be looking for are the games that are going to be announced coming to Game Pass. What is the status of exclusivity? What's the future of some of these franchises? Because that is where I think Xbox kind of confused people, where some of the messaging about what the future of Bethesda exclusives were going to be was kind of muddied, and we're still sort of in the dark on it, where we currently have yet to see like an existing franchise, a Fallout, a Doom, and so on, something that's pre-established, if it's going to end up being exclusive to Xbox. So we'll see what they say about things like that when it comes to Activision. Activision did publicly comment on the status of Game Pass games. We will get into that, but just a little bit more on the deal front here. It says that Microsoft is going to avoid an EU probe, which is pretty important. This was reported by Bloomberg. This is important because when they had to circumnavigate the concerns of the CMA, which was based around cloud gaming, which is something that myself and Lord Cognito talked a lot about in Defining Duke, that if there was going to be any problem with this deal, it's going to be cloud gaming. they had to work around that. And the way they did that was bringing Ubisoft into the fold and giving them the rights to Activision Blizzard games and Uplay and all this stuff for the region of the UK. And so the worry for some was, and I didn't even think of it at the time, was how other regulators could see that and go, well, hold on, let's reanalyze things. Let's try to change things here, which could have put the deal back even further. The deadline that was agreed upon between Xbox as well as Activision was October 18th. So time is ticking. So to avoid a probe here is important. I mean, the EU was cool with the deal in the first place. So I'm sure a more, I put in quotes, competitive offering from Xbox is probably in the EU's best interest as well. So that's what's going on the deal front. Let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into the games, where Activision Blizzard had a really interesting Twitter post here talking about the future of current games coming into Xbox Game Pass. Here is what they wrote. It's awesome to see anticipation building for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 as we continue to build towards the regulatory approval of the Microsoft deal. We've been getting some questions whether our upcoming and recently launched games will be available via Game Pass. While we do not have plans to put Modern Warfare 3 or Diablo 4 into Game Pass this year, once the deal closes, we expect to start working with Xbox to bring our titles to more players around the world, and we anticipate that we would begin adding games into Game Pass sometime in the course of the next year. Now, what is actually interesting about this is as soon as this was reported, Windows Central Gaming's Jez Corden followed up with a tweet of his own, and I mean, it was like they're going to be adding games pretty immediately as soon as possible to the service. I think the difference here, before we get into what Activision Blizzard said, the difference here is I do think there was a lesson learned with what happened with Bethesda. If you remember during the Microsoft Bethesda roundtable, they announced 20 games from Bethesda were coming to Game Pass, and they did another 20 game dump later. This really fortified the, if you want to say, first party offering now on Game Pass. There were a ton of games to play right away. As I've covered a lot here on the channel, Game Pass has seen a shift in 2023 to more quality and less quantity. So you're going to get less massive dumps of games, where there were times we would get 8 games in a week. Now you'll maybe get 3 or 4, but you'll get Eliza P, which has been one of my favorite games of the year. You'll get It Works Now, Payday 3. You'll get Wolong Fallen Dynasty. You'll get these high caliber games. You're just gonna get them less often. And I think that kind of works out because you look at how swamped things are when it comes to games releasing around this time, and especially coming into 2024, February is pretty stacked. Yeah, like, you know what? I'm actually okay with this approach from Xbox. I think it's better for everyone. It's better for our time. It's better for developers. It's better for their platform. I think we all win with that. I say all of this because I think the plan for Xbox is to drip feed the Activision games in. I'm not advocating for that because let's say you only want to play Black Ops 2 and they're going to gradually work their way up to putting Black Ops 2 in Game Pass. It's just a random example. There's plenty of other games I could think of, like a Crash game, a Spyro game, a Tony Hawk game, that they may take their time in throwing into the service. I think that is going to be the plan, to drip feed this over time, because now that Game Pass is growing and we've seen the leaked plans for the future of Xbox, I think it's all kind of coming to vision here that even a game like Starfield, just to veer off track for a sec, is getting 5+ years of support, at least, right? And this is a single player game. Game Pass is changing the way that Xbox handles their business, for better or for worse. I think it's making games like Forza Motorsport more of a platform than a premium game launch that they can build upon over years. But the benefit is it's always available in Game Pass. And so this is how they're going to navigate over investing and minimizing that risk. And so something like Activision Blizzard, when you make the biggest purchase in gaming history, yeah, you probably don't want to blow your load in one shot, right? You want to stagger it out, build out a little anticipation month after month. What's the next Activision Blizzard drop? Now, what I will say surprises me here, based off what Activision Blizzard is saying versus what Jez Corden has reported, is stuff like Diablo 4 will not make it into Game Pass right away and sometime within the next year. I thought Diablo 4 would be kind of primed as a, hey, let's fire this one up as soon as possible. It's, in fairness, one of the most purchased games this year. I'm sure Activision Blizzard's very happy about that. And I think putting more eyes on it through Game Pass isn't going to be a bad thing for them, especially when we now have statistics and proof that Game Pass users buy more games. So I think people who are maybe on the post-launch support of Diablo 4 may dive back in. Certainly there's enough cosmetics and monetization options in Diablo 4 to, you know, make money off the person who just plays for free. So I will say that one is a bit surprising. MW3 with its nostalgia bait MW2 maps in there. I mean, yeah, there's no shot they're putting that day one in there. The offset does come from when we get into next year and the year after, and we have Call of Duty on Switch. You have Call of Duty still coming to PlayStation. That's where the tremendous offset is. And I think also Xbox probably wants to establish more of an early access program like we saw with the deluxe edition for Starfield, right? 5 days early access. We saw how it hit over 1 million concurrent players. It's a lot of money coming through the door. We saw Forza Motorsport did an early access period. Forza Horizon did an early access period. This is the way that Microsoft's going to get money out of their Game Pass subs. The way they're looking at it from my point of view is, how do we take the already paying subscriber, the person who's going, I got Game Pass, I'm good, I'm not giving you another cent. You get 15 bucks a month out of me, and that is it. How do we twist their arm a little bit? FOMO. That's how you do it. You make them fear that they're missing out on something, and whatever game that you think is going to make people excited and talking about it, oh, new Call of Duty beta, and you're saying I can get early access to that? That type of stuff will go a long way for the Xbox base, and particularly Xbox as a business. So that's how I'm rating things. They're going to drip feed stuff. I'm surprised a bit on Diablo 4. I'll be honest. We'll see if things change when, you know, it's all up to Xbox's decision making here. But yeah, a lot of changes being made to how Xbox handles games, and so expect a pretty steady drip feed is what I would say. Now, moving a little bit ahead here, what we have is a really interesting report coming from Jez Corden, again, of Windows Central, who's been, as always, on the money here. And he had said something quite interesting where he writes, ahead of Xbox's acquisition, Activision's Bobby Kotick discussed Microsoft, Elon Musk's Neuralink, and hinted at a Guitar Hero revival in this leaked interview. Now, this is a really interesting leaked interview that apparently like James Corden moderated, not related to Jez, which I found just really interesting, like why this was being handled that way. I guess it's like a money flex or something like that. But anyway, we have some interesting quotes here. The main one I wanted to point out, because a lot of it's just fluff on like, oh man, you know, we're doing great right now and nothing's going to change when Xbox comes into play. I think this is all kind of puffed up internal PR speak, if you will, as a really loose term to use. I think, though, that the main thing we as gamers will connect to is the reemergence of Guitar Hero. So I just want to focus on that, where here is the start of the quotes. I talked a little earlier about the physical experience of interacting with something on screen. I think you'll see things like Neuralink. You'll actually be able to interact with things on the screen where there isn't a controller. Kotick continued that it might be a Neuralink, but also an earpiece, headset, or some other type of sensor. Kotick began discussing how Microsoft research could aid with this pursuit while heavily hinting at Guitar Hero. Now, this is a couple of paragraphs down. Kotick looked ahead at the next 10 years of gaming, reminiscing about transformative titles from Activision's back catalog like Pitfall, River Raids, and Kaboom of decades past. Kotick also name-checked Guitar Hero, hinting that it's currently on the path to a revival. Quote, the reemergence of Guitar Hero and other things would not be possible without the different types of resources. And so, you know, just the endless possibilities for the future that are just incredibly exciting, end quote. I found this kind of surprising. I'm not going to lie. Like, I love Guitar Hero. I always remember picking up Guitar Hero 3 from Walmart and seeing the PlayStation 2 big horizontal box with the guitar controller in there, and the case of the game was in there. Awesome stuff, right? Like, that is one of my fondest memories, picking that up and falling down that rabbit hole, playing that Guitar Hero World Tour, Smash Hits. Such a great series. But I also do partially believe it was the product of that kind of early 2000s era. I feel as I look at the rate at which people adopt VR or peripheral technology, it's lowering instead of increasing. And I feel that kind of gimmicky nature is almost exclusive to Nintendo, where they find success. And even then, they've struggled with things like Nintendo Labo, for example, that cardboard thing that they were doing. Like, they've struggled to do their own little gimmicks and have become a bit more traditional and moving towards online. There's reports of a digital only Switch. Like, they're moving in that direction too. So a lot of these companies are getting away from the peripherals, the gimmicky stuff. And as much as I love to see Guitar Hero come back, we tried to come back during the PS4, Xbox One generation with Guitar Hero Live, which I thought was a really good time. I love Guitar Hero. I picked that up day one. I was all about the vision. I loved Guitar Hero's idea of kind of streaming in whatever tracks you really wanted to and having this ever expansive library. And the game died pretty quickly. And I don't know if Guitar Hero still has that flair nowadays. Now, maybe with Game Pass and adopted player base, always having Guitar Hero available if you are a Game Pass subscriber, and this new feature we're looking at where I know this is talking about a controller and not a Guitar Hero controller, but they talk about like the lift up to wake controllers, and all you need is a controller and the Game Pass app. I wonder if there's some other bigger play at hand here when it comes to Guitar Hero. But despite all of that, Guitar Hero making its return is a surprise to me. I know Activision, specifically Bobby Kotick, seems pretty passionate about these types of projects. I've just recognized in these interviews, I know he in particular was very fired up about Skylanders, and he thought a lot of other companies took that idea of toys to life and really ruined what Activision had started there. So I feel like they almost feel they owe themselves the chance to try it again. But it's cool to see it coming back. I'm certainly not going to fight against it because I do think we're heading down this pathway with games where it's becoming less about what new mechanic you're introducing or new way to play you're introducing, because we've seen so much experimentation over the last 20 plus years. And it's really about a culmination of different mechanics from different games and experiences all unifying into one. If you need a really good example about it, I'm planning on making a video on it soon. Think of Lies of P. I mean, that game you can see from Final Fantasy to Trails to the FromSoft games. I mean, it is a super inspired game, but there is so much borrowed from other games, and that's what makes it special. So to see, I say all that to say that when you see something like Guitar Hero, that is very unique, that is very different, and we don't get much of that nowadays. So I'm for it. I'm just curious what that's going to be. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's everything when it comes to the Xbox Activision news roundup. We will see if the deal closes tomorrow. Certainly, I'll be here to chat about all of that. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on everything. So fire away down below. What do you make of the deal finally closing, the return of Guitar Hero, and the status of Activision games coming to Game Pass? Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.